Okay, this is the last, excuse me, this is the last night, and we discussed reading through some of the bonus tracks at the end, and then we were just going to kind of talk through those. So I wanted to see if, hey Matt, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, I'm doing well. Doing well. Going to see if you guys were able to read any of the bonus tracks, and if you did, which ones you read, and if there was anything that stuck out to you. So, Matt, since you're the last one in, do you want to start and kind of talk through the first of all, did you pick a track or
I
was there
did.
that stood out to you?
Trying to find it. Okay, it was track 3 rather.
Okay, track 3.
Musician. I thought that was more applicable for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me, just kind of give me your thoughts on that and give me anything that stood out.
Well, I read it a couple days ago, so I have to review it.
Sure.
I think one thing that stood out to me, just looking at it here, was number 3. It says, "Am I practicing and preparing properly?" I know whenever I first started in the band a couple years ago, I guess I was guilty of maybe not putting a lot of effort into practicing. I would know the songs pretty well, but probably not as well as I should have.
Sure.
And after a while, I felt convicted because I thought, this is different than just like playing as a hobby or playing for fun. Technically I'm playing for Jesus, but I'm helping to lead the congregation too. So I
Yeah,
really should give it my all and put all my energy into it, even if it means making sacrifices. Like I remember at one part here, the Gettys mentioned that a lot of people who are musicians in the church band have full-time jobs. So finding the time to practice takes up even more of what little free time they have.
yeah.
And that's something that I've experienced now that I've been working full-time for about a year, that it is more of a sacrifice when you're working 40 hours a week and you're tired, you come home, you just want to relax. So it is a sacrifice, but I've been more convicted to really put a lot of effort into it and a lot of energy and just do the best that I can.
Those are some great observations there, Matt. And one of the things that I've been trying to figure out how to communicate, especially to new team members as they come in, is that they have to view serving with the worship department not as a hobby and not approach it as if I'm trying to fill my extra free time here, but as an extension of the vocation that God has given them on earth. Excuse me. By no means do I think that my main goal with our team is to plan services, plan programs, and then send it off and have you guys execute those, right? That's not the main goal of what we're trying to do. My main goal is for you guys to know God deeply, to know Jesus, to to understand Scripture, to understand these deep things that God has revealed about Himself. That's my main goal. And then for you to use your gifts, especially specifically in the area of music and production, to be able to lead our congregation in songs that are going to teach them those same truths about who God is. And so I still haven't found a good way of how to communicate that to new team members, to say, this is not a hobby. This is going to require something more from you than just your leftover time. This will actually require this will actually require some of your first fruits,
Yeah, for sure.
The end. So great thoughts. Anything else in the track 3 that stood out to you there?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I'll keep looking through it, and if I see anything that stands out, I'll let you know. But those are the 2 big things, or the one big thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, I really like number 5. Am I growing my gifting? And for me, I think of that. Obviously, I think of that as just discipline. Are you growing your gift? Even so, let's use you as an example, Matt. Here, playing keys. Are you only spending time on your instrument when you're preparing the material that we're going to be presenting at church, or are you growing outside of that? Are you learning new songs, new techniques, new things that may not even necessarily apply to the church, but that just make you more well-rounded as a musician?
Right. Yeah, I've tried some things before I joined the band a couple of years ago, I actually went back to my piano teacher, who actually goes to our church, and I took a couple
Yeah.
lessons from her for about maybe 3 months or so, just to learn some skills. Recently, I've not taken any lessons or classes per se, but I have done things on YouTube, like where I watch people do, tutorials on how to accompany on the piano,
Yeah.
do recording, that kind of a thing. And I do practice on my own. I practice probably the most when I'm preparing for church, but I will do things occasionally throughout the week at the piano, just classical songs or whatever, just to try to improve my skills. Mostly
Sure.
sight reading skills, so that's an area where I really lack.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and those are important things to work on as we go along, because let's think of this from the standpoint of of say a Sunday school teacher or a small group leader or whatever. If that teacher is only preparing the lessons that they are presenting to their students, they're not going to grow too terribly rapidly. Okay, they're not going to grow all that quickly. But if they're studying things outside of the lessons that they're preparing, their knowledge, excuse me, their knowledge base is expanding. Their understanding of who God is expanding. Their ability to make connections between different, their ability to make connections between different, sets of knowledge is expanding. They're not just preparing to teach, but they are, as a way of life, developing their mind so that they can teach even better. It's the same thing with being a musician or working production or whatever it is you're doing. The more you grow, the more you learn, the more you practice your craft, the more equipped you are to be to be useful in the position that you're in to serve the Lord.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. Very cool. Randy, how about you?
Well, if you let me take the board home once in a while, I could practice more.
Man, you read and study all the time, on the console. You're always talking to me about some obscure thing that I would never even think about. So, go ahead.
Well, I likewise did the production, concentrated on that first, and then I had read through the other ones before and just kind of was reading some more through them again just to hit the highlights on them for my own deal. It's luckily with the V6 that we're using, we have the software where we can do stuff on the computer away from to familiarize myself with the board that much more.
Yeah.
But one of the big things that I've been really honestly getting out of doing all this is my realization that I got away from reading the Bible as much as I should, and more towards my spiritual walk, being back involved in church with people.
Yeah.
And more so the attitude of being involved instead of it always being my way. I got to do it this way, or I'm responsible for this, I'm responsible for that.
Sure.
It's I don't want to do that kind of rigmarole and all that. And I've been pretty lucky at not catching myself falling into that trap like I did before.
Yeah, sure.
So obviously, as much as I can learn on the system and how to put together and all that, I try to do. But just I guess more on the spiritual level is what I've been learning here of late, I guess.
Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. And I just have to affirm your attitude, because you do have a wonderful attitude. I know what you're talking about. It's when you're a high control person, it's hard to let go of that control, especially if it's something that you've invested a lot of time and energy into, and then you have somebody else come in and do something differently. Boy, I know that's so hard, and just impressed that you're able to suppress that the way that you are, because I know I struggle with that a lot.
Well, I used to not be very good at it, so I'm getting better.
Well, hey, that gives me a lot of hope then.
Good.
Great. Julie, how about you?
I also read the musician's choir.
Yay! That's great.
Track. So the thing that really stood out to me was the comment that the choir is there to help the congregation sing. Primarily and fundamentally, we're there to help God's people sing. We're not there to perform as an entity in and of itself. We are there to lead them and to help them sing. And I guess you lead by example. You lead by attitude, by your overall attitude. You know, it says, am I a team player? Am I practicing and preparing properly? Which I know I don't do as much. And I mean, I haven't been up in the choir. I plan on starting that again. But do I love my leadership in my church family? Well, I think I do on that one. Am I growing my gifts? You know, as far as singing in the choir, I'm not doing anything to grow my gifts. You know, I love to sing, but I'm not doing anything to grow it. So there's also the backstage part, which, you know, isn't really covered specifically, but the team player part works, growing gifting. Maybe I can do more research about what a good backstage person would do, or ways to help, you know, the people backstage, or, you know, there's just got to be some effort in there. And I think there's a lot of room for growth. And I just really like the whole attitude of that they put out there of, it's a very giving attitude. It's a serving attitude. It's
Sure.
focusing on other people attitude. So that's all.
You know, Julie, something I have to affirm with you is that you have just last year with Pardon, and now I know for years before with Journey and Journey to Bethlehem, and then follow in his footsteps, and then now with Pardon last year. I mean, you're creating so many new original things from scratch, not only the scenery, but also the dialogue and the storyline and everything like that. And you have, I mean, I know most of our team doesn't know the extent of what you put into making those come alive. And so, my goodness, you've been outdoing all of us as far as trying new things and making, you know, honing in your skill and your gifts. And because I know you like to write a lot, and I know that drama is a big passion for you as well. And so I've,
Well, thank
you know,
you. I
it's
appreciate
been
that. I
great.
don't think
It's
I'm
been
out
really
doing
cool.
anybody.
Yeah, and it just adds so much. I mean, it's just we're all so lucky because you want to use that gift to serve the church, and so we get so much out of that, and so that's wonderful.
And you do it well.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. And we're doing it again this year too, and it's going to be completely different than last year.
Yes.
So exciting things are happening.
We still have to name it, but we're going to do it.
That's right.
That's right. It might be the Nameless production. I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
You know, and Matt, I also have to say, coming back to you, because I'm thinking about you guys and how you're using your gifts. I was actually, Matt, bragging on you to Rhonda Hufty the other Saturday night. We were standing in the back of the room during So Will I at the service, and I told her, I said, you know, Matt, because she was saying, you know, the band sounds so good, and I said, you know, Matt has put in so much extra effort this year to become a lead keyboard player with the band, and just to be able to take the key, you know, that part and really excel with it. And so you as well have done a great job with pushing yourself this year, because I know we've met together a few times and worked on some things outside of the regular you know, Wednesday night rehearsals, and so great work there.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so all right, I've read all of these before. The one that I actually read through, because I don't know, I've read a lot of these multiple times. The one that I have I think I've only read this one other time, and it's the track 1 for pastors and elders. And I think it's important because I'm not a senior pastor. I'm more in the position of the music leader working with a senior pastor. But I think it's really important to know what our to know what our leaders are facing, to know what their responsibility is, and to know here it is what they're trying to accomplish. Because yes, God gives us our own individual vocations to fulfill, but but also He puts us in positions to where we are also supporting the vision of leaders who He's put over us. And so I just thought it was a really enlightening chapter. So can I read a few things that really stood out to me in that section?
Yeah.
Okay, number 2 is our church singing strong songs, and that's been a theme that's continued to come up in our discussions here. But this is like the middle of that first paragraph. This is on page 107. The line that just jumped off the page at me says this: every time you sing a song that isn't strong, your congregation's singing drops and people's enthusiasm is diminished. And what they're talking about as far as what makes a song strong is, 1, is it theologically rich? 2, is it poetically beautiful? And 3, is the melody singable and also beautiful at the same time. And so that one just really jumped off the page at me. The other ones here I think are really good. I'm just going to read these numbers and give a couple of thoughts on them. Number 1, does my congregation know why they sing? That one, I'm not sure. I really don't know. It would be interesting to survey the congregation and just get their input and say, hey, do you know? Why do you think we sing on a Sunday morning? Why do we come? Why do we actually take time to do this music together before the sermon and see what happens? I would say that there are a good number of people who would be able to answer that correctly, but there would be a pretty good group that I would say wouldn't have any idea why we sing when we come to church. So that would be enlightening.
Well, I think Tom does a real good job of promoting and speaking on the music side of it, and because he does obviously have talent and an interest in music. From my other pastors, ones like me couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, so he didn't.
Sure.
Music was there, something to be tolerated, I guess, for lack of better. He wasn't opposed to it,
sure,
but he wasn't an advocate of it.
Absolutely.
And, I think that Tom does advocate it, or promote it very well, and I think he does do some explanation as to why we do it.
He really
on a fairly regular basis.
He really does, and I actually am really spoiled to get to work with a senior pastor like that, because when I tell other friends of mine at other churches, the working relationship I have with Tom and the way that we're able to, work on services together, that's just not a common thing.
Yeah.
It's not common enough, I should say, to have that good of a relationship. And, the other thing that Tom does really well too in our services is, in addition to promoting the singing, is tying the singing into everything else that's happening in the service. He'll sometimes grab a lyric whenever he's doing a transition and just use that as transitioning either into the offertory or into his message, or he'll come in his message and say, we just sang this song, here's this lyric, or I love it too when at the end when he'll come up and he'll say he'll say a couple of sentences and then he'll say, and let's sing that chorus again, and then we jump back into the chorus.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. He also sits up front and he sings. He doesn't go off somewhere else and wait until it's his turn. He sings, and he really takes ownership of the whole service and just makes it his. He's a pastor. He's shepherding the entire service, which is exactly, what his job is. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. Number 3, am I a part of the weekly song selection process? Different churches do it different ways. The way that we do it is I I lead that up, and then I meet with some of the leaders who are actually singing those songs or leading those songs. We may not do that like that, all the time. Tom at least is in the know because we meet one-on-one week to week, and I'll say, okay, here's what we've got coming up. Here's why we've chosen these songs. Is there anything that seems off or anything else that you want there? And he's also really good about if he knows he's got a specific message coming up that there's a song that would work good, he'll send me an email, a month or two in advance and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Would love for you guys to be able to work this song in there. So though we don't sit down together and pick out the songs, he's still involved in some capacity in that. Number 4 is, am I overseeing the overall selection or canon of songs? This is another thing I think that has spoken to me most coming out of, or one of the most important things that's spoken to me coming out of this is the songs that we keep in our canon that we do over and over and over again. And I'm working right now to develop some criteria to say here's what these songs have to, if we're going to put in a new song into our canon, here are the qualifications, and just have a checklist for every single thing. That way, as we're adding songs, and even as different leaders, not just myself, but different leaders are adding songs, we're making sure that everything is pretty uniform and in alignment. And really, we've got kind of a unified vision of worship and music and things. So number 5 is, am I passionately involved in the singing? And I think all of our leaders are. And I don't think there's anything else here that really jumps out at me. But yeah, that's kind of it. Did anybody read the section on, let's see here, on creativity? Songwriting and creativity. It was track number 4, starts on page 133.
I did not.
I did earlier and just went over it again just the other day.
Yeah. I think that there are some, I want to read through those points because this is one of my favorite tracks here. It resonates most with where I kind of find myself. Let me read through these because I think these are really good for all of us, and no matter what position that we're in. Number 1 is, and they're talking about songwriters and creatives here. Number 1 is, when writing for the church, write for your church. And I just want to put like a big, amen at the end of that, like God has called you to a specific people, and we've, the current context that we find ourselves in the church, the church has become really consumer driven. And so we can do something that was written by another church that's on the other side of the world, Hillsong, for example, or on the other side of the country. We can do things written for by those churches. But I think if you were to look at those churches and look at what they're doing, they're writing for their people. They're writing for the people, for the context in which they find themselves. And so I don't think it does us any good to try to emulate them. But we can definitely learn from them and serve our people better. Number 2, find an appropriate outlet for your work to explore its potential. And I think, we don't do a ton of songwriting right now, but I think we do have those outlets for creatives to say, hey, if you've got ideas you want to try, let's try them, I think that's one area. Creativity is one area where we can grow by leaps and bounds, not necessarily in what we create, but just in the communicating to people that it's okay. Like, we want you to create. We want you to take some chances. We want to. Now, we're not going to put something that is just half baked in front of the entire congregation. But let's open up some opportunities for you to try and to learn and to grow.
Well, I kind of got along that, just not necessarily writing music, but just like the part that Julie did.
Yeah.
It's she knows the people that's there and the talents that are there, and to be able to utilize them. So that's what I was thinking quite a bit about when I read that section.
Yeah, for sure.
I
For
think I
sure.
have.
And I think, Randy, as far as the creativity that you bring to the table, is you I know the with production, you've got so many different ideas and so many different angles that you approach things, and things that you've tried before in the past. I mean, you've done a ton of work on that. So I mean, to me, that's just as creative as the person who's writing a new
Yeah.
song or
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
original content or anything like that.
I think that would be a great section. I didn't even, once I stopped at the production and choir section, I'm like, oh, that's the one I'll read. But now I think I might go back and read that one just because of the creative aspect.
Yeah.
Well, it gives you a different point of view of
Yeah.
from other people's perspective, is why I read it.
Mhm.
Sure. And here's the thing. I know that everybody's wired a little differently. But for me, unless unless my vocation includes a healthy dose of creativity, bringing things to life that have never been brought to life, the work becomes drudgery. The work just is the same thing: rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And a healthy culture of creativity brings a lot of life. It's obviously, that's one of the ways that we express the image of God, or that we bear the image of God, is through our creativity. It's not the only way. And not to say that you have to be creative, you have to create something original in order for you to really experience, God's full blessing. That's not to say that either, because I know not everybody has that skill set or even that desire. But for those who do, I think it would bring a lot of life to our team. For us, or for me, to try to figure out how do we make a more safe, or I guess nurturing environment for creatives.
Mhm.
So, Matt, I have a question for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one here, when writing for the church, write for your church.
Yeah.
If we were to write a song for our church, what would be its theme? Like, what would be the unique message that we would write about our church?
I think what they're saying there is right for where your people are. So it wouldn't be a good idea if you were at a church in the deep South to write like a big, powerful electronic dance music type of song, like a big EDM electronic dance music song. That wouldn't go over well. And you're not knowing, it would be better if you wrote something that had, country western inspiration or bluegrass inspiration, whatever is going to hit your people where you are. I don't think it does anyone any good to try to force people into a mold. Now, as far as the content of the lyrics, I think lyric content, you can really, I draw inspiration from the Psalms when I'm writing, and I follow those pretty closely. But yeah, that's kind of what I mean there.
Okay. I guess the way I took it was more like, if our church is going through, like, we just came from revival, if we write a song, would the theme of that song have to do with revival?
Yes. And that's a good question. And yes, absolutely. I think it's fantastic to know the seasons that your church is in and write for those seasons. Because not only does it give you inspiration, give you hope, teach you about God as you're going through those seasons, not only that, but it's kind of like, in the Old Testament, as God continually tells the Israelites to remember, or to set up these, whether it be to build an altar here or to set up these stones here of remembrance. That's one of those things that can be that remembrance. That 10 years down the road, you pull out this song that the that the worship department wrote, and you're like, oh man, I remember that. I remember what we were going through there, or I remember that week whenever, there were 100 people who got saved, and we had that baptism service, and all of that. So yeah, I think I think you're right on that. Number 4, be a student of the art form. That's like creativity 101. There is that craft is more important than, I should say, yeah, craft is more important than being novel. And so you're constantly trying to create something new that no one's ever seen before. Well, focus on your craft. Focus on how to, if you're writing, what am I trying to say? If you're writing worship songs, focus on how to write great lyrics, and focus on how to write great, chord changes, or great music, or great melodies, whatever that is that you're writing there. Okay, number 5, crave fresh language and sound. That's style right there, and style obviously is going to be relative to everybody who's there, but that's one way that we stay engaged with 21st century America, where we are, is in the style. Style's not good or bad, it's just taste. It's like style's kind of like flavors of food. Food flavors and food dishes, they evolve over time as well, and so our styles can too. Grow lyrics like trees grow. So basically what they're saying there is to grow slow and make everything interconnected. Work collaboratively. I think that is fantastic for whatever art form you're in. The more that you work with other people, I think the stronger you get as a creative. Number 8, editing is your friend. That's one of those things that you can't create and edit at the same time. So if you're creating, create. Just get it all out there. Just let all the crazy, weird, incoherent babble just come and flow. And then once you've got, metaphorically speaking, once you've got paint on the canvas, then you can start to form it. Number 9 is lean into your unique creative DNA and background. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, about knowing the culture that you're in and not doing something that's crazy different. Same thing. Know yourself. Don't try to force yourself into a mold, creatively speaking, that is who you are. And then number 10, and this just has to do with arranging songs for congregations to sing. So I'm not going to read through that because I don't think any of you are necessarily writing original songs there. That would be a concern. But if you do have,
Not tonight.
That's right. And starting next week. So you can read through all of that there, and that should give you some good context. Okay. We've got like 20 more minutes here. There's no reason for us to fill it unless we need to, but any kind of closing thoughts here as we wrap this up?
I enjoyed it. I like doing stuff like this.
Good.
It gets me to a different place than where I'm usually at on Sundays and stuff. So
yeah, good. I've enjoyed it too. It's been a good focused. It's been some good focused growth time for us, which I think is always good.
I agree. It's always good to, I think it's been a good self-examining tool and an awareness tool, especially for me. So I think that's always good to have that opportunity, and to kind of expand yourself out of yourself and be thinking of other people and why we do what we do. I just thought it was very eye-opening. I liked it.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the community it creates in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to do another session in January. I've got a post coming out tomorrow that's going to talk about that. I'm going to do it on another night of the week to try to catch those who weren't able to go through it. But I'm actually kind of thinking about making this book like for those who are joining the team, just make it required reading, and hey, if you want to jump in, I'm obviously not going to be super militant about it, but just have these books on hand and let it be, because I feel like there's a lot in this book that I want to be true of our team, and that I want to be true of of the structure of our ministry and of our church as a whole. I'm starting small with this because I want this to just be a movement that happens across the church, and that our people can latch onto it.
Yep, I think it's a good idea.
Cool.
I like it because we get to spend more time for, to get to know each other better too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I feel a whole lot closer to a whole lot more people and all that. And, it's nothing earth shattering, but it's just, it's I really enjoy it.
Very cool. Matt, how about you? Do you have any closing thoughts or any big takeaway that you're walking away with from the book with?
Well, pretty much just what was said already by other people. I like this book. It taught me a lot. I think I'm going to have a lot of takeaways that I'll remember after doing this Bible study. I think this is an important thing to talk about, though, because this is not something I really feel like is talked about as much as it should be in most churches. Just the idea of worship and what that looks like and the purpose of it. I grew up in the church, but I don't remember hearing too many sermons or Sunday school lessons or Bible studies on worship and the importance of it. So it's kind of like a hole in my mind in the church where maybe we can improve and talk about it more as a congregation. So I'm definitely going to take away a lot from this Bible study.
Yeah.
And like they said too, it was cool, a good way to get to know each other, hear our thoughts. Because when we're backstage, we're talking a lot and getting to know each other, but sometimes we go to different places in the church. We may not be staying backstage, we might be joking around, and that stuff is fine, but we don't really get a chance to actually spend time together like we are these evenings to really hear each other's hearts and see where we're at in our relationship with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to stop the recording. I've got one more question for you guys as it relates to team nights, but it's not going to we don't need to record it for later. So let me stop the recording real quick here.